Welcome to A Guide to Every Deck in EDH. Today we're looking at Ruric Thar the Unbowed. So Ruric Thar is a 6 mana Gruul commander. He's a 6/6 Vigilance Reach, and he must attack each combat Fable. And then the ability, the main reason we are running this man, whenever a player casts a non-creature spell, Ruric Thar deals 6 to that player. So we've seen cards that function similar to this before, like, Eidolon of the Great Revel, for example, or Magebane Lizard, but 6 at a time really starts to make it so that non-creature spells are basically untenable. So obviously with this in mind, we're going to need a few things. We're going to need a lot of ramp to get to Ruric Thar as fast as possible, and we're going to need to not be playing that many non-creature spells of our own so that we're not heavily punished after Ruric Thar is already on the battlefield. And obviously we need to make sure that Ruric Thar is not killed in combat or removal spelled or countered. So first off, we've got some additional beatdown to add to the Ruric Thar arsenal. So Cindervines, Magebane Lizard, Razorkin Needlehead. Sulfim will double the amount of damage that Ruric Thar is dealing, so it'll be 12 per non-creature. And we also have Dragonhawk, Fate's Tempest over here as well, which has a whole big bunch of text of abilities that we're not going to get into. Then we need some card draw, and it has to mostly be in the form of creatures. So we've got things like Augur of Autumn and Toski. Unique to this deck, Dragonborn Champion. Whenever a source you control deals 5 or more to a player, draw a card. Some fast mana in order to get to Ruric Thar quicker. Then 35 lands. We need to absolutely make sure that we're hitting our land drops every turn so we can get to Ruric Thar. Then we've got our protections. So in terms of anti-counters, we've got Allosaurus Shepherd Cavern, Delighted Halfling, Destiny Spinner, Gaia's Herald, Prowling Serpapard, and Veil of Summer, and then Xantid Swarm to another extent. And then in order to protect Ruric Thar, we have Guardian Augmenter to give it hexproof, Sereth to give our untapped creatures hexproof, Steely Resolve, where we can name the creature type, and so we'll just name Ruric Thar's type and it gets Shroud, and Sylvan Safekeeper to protect Ruric Thar at the cost of lands. Then we've got more ramp than usual, 22 spells, whole bunch of ramp here, and it all has to be in the form of creatures. So we're not playing anything non-creature related that we would normally play, like Wild Growth or Utopia Sprawl, with the exceptions of things like Chrome Mox, Mox Diamond, and Soul Ring, because they're just so incredibly good. But that is why we are casting spells like Gwenna, Flothis, Somberwald Sage, and then another exception, Shadow in the Warp. First creature spell you cast each turn costs 2 less, and whenever an opponent casts their first non-creature spell each turn, this deals 2 to them. So just another way of dealing damage to opponents. Also, Zertaw Druid here also deals damage to opponents. The more and more burn we can get, the better. Then we have our removal spells, which again, we can't entirely not play non-creatures like the Red Blasts, but we do want to orient our removal towards creatures if possible. So things like Haywire, Insidious Fungus, Hogla and Yadaro, Outland Liberator, Fight Bear, and Silverback Elder. And then we have our stacks pieces. So yes, we are a dual color deck that wants to play mostly green spells, but we can mitigate that through, the Blood Moon and Magus of the Moons. We do have a number of ways of just getting forest, and a bunch of our cards also just naturally generate green mana anyway, so these can be easily gotten around. We're going to play Null Rod effects, Collector Oof, and Null Rod, and then also we don't actually have that much ETB stuff in the deck, so we can play Torpor Orb, and then we've got Trinisphere and Winter Orb. So the main thing is we want to get Ruric Thar down as fast as possible, and then curb our opponent's ability to actually recover from that, where denying them mana is a good way to do that, especially if that means that they have to then cast cantrips or card draw spells or ramp to try to get out of the mana denial, and then they'll just take 6 to the face each time. And that's similarly why we get to run things like Bane of Progress, because we don't actually have that many artifacts or enchantments. And then Sylvan Scrying and Crop Rotation are here, not just to find Gaia's Cradle, but because we really, really want to make sure that Ruric Thar doesn't get killed, or doesn't get countered, rather. So we need to be able to find Cavern of Souls reliably. So no big combos, no giant monster that's going to overrun our opponent like a Craterhoof, just good old Ruric Thar and a handful of other, burn stuff, but mainly just Ruric Thar to bash down our opponents. And yet with that is going to do it for Ruric Thar in EDH.